Hi guys, welcome back to Crafty Quilting Designs. I hope you are really well and having such a great day. This week's tutorial is the layer cake and the quilt is called Star Spotting. Now I made this one for my granddaughter. It is the third quilt that she actually has. The first one was a little play mat and the second was a baby crib quilt. She's actually 1.5 years and she's walking now. And so I decided was to make a little big girl quilt for her. The quilt measures 54 by 59, I think. So it's not a huge one. It's a layer cake, as I said, and you can use fat quarters or you can cut down your 10-inch squares. Now, I've used a lot of cornerstones and sashings from this one because your stars are formed from the cornerstones and the sashings. So it's a good upscale to move up into the next level if you're a beginner's quilt. Now, I just wanted to say before I move on very quickly, thank you very much for those of you who subscribe to my channel. Thumbs up to you. And while I say thumbs up, I just want to remind you again to don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, hit that notification bell and give me a thumbs up. You know, when you give me a thumbs up, it allows other people to see the video. So you are helping me to share. So thank you so much, guys. So I will take you through now on how I actually made the quilt. And hopefully you enjoyed the process as much as I did. Bye for now and happy quilting. Okay guys, so I have this really lovely project for a quilt. The quilt is called Star Spotting and it's made from layer cakes, or you can use fat quarters. Now I have actually used fat quarters for mine, and I just wanted to prove to you that you can actually use fat quarters for this. You need a 10-inch square. However, bear in mind that with your fat quarters you will get 9.5-inch squares. Now I have used 8 fat quarters to get all of my blocks together. Okay, now you need 20 blocks and I will go through with you what exactly you need to do. So you do also need some background fabric, and for this one I have chosen white. You need 2.5 square of background fabric, and you need 124 of these. You need some 5-inch squares and you need 12 of these. You also need some sashing strips, and I will show you about that is also, and tell you the amount you need. But before we go through anything further, and I'll give you more further sizes and quantities, let me take you through how to make the block. Now I have my square here and I've literally cut it in half, as you can see there. Okay, now I am using some of my fabrics patterned, i.e. I need to ensure that wherever position I'm putting these in is that it's laid out correctly. I'm just going to make sure I move it into the camera shot. Okay, now I'm just going to take these to the side because we don't need these at the moment, so I'll just take them out my view at the moment. Okay, now with my 10-inch squares you need to cut them in 4. All right, so you'll have a variety of colors. So I'm just going to put these on the side for now. So these are my squares that I've actually cut into 4, and I have fabrics that are directional. So these are prints with animals on them, and it also comes with some solids as well. So then you need to simply make a 4 patch. So remember, you are cutting your blocks down to make 24 patches. Okay, so 24 patches. All right, so however you place them together should really be okay. One, because you're using a fabric collection, so all of the contrasting colors should go together quite easily. However, if you're not using a fabric collection, then by all means do work it out so that your fabrics coordinate and contrast with each other. Now, after you've cut your squares down to make 20 of your blocks, we need to now concentrate on the sashings, and this now becomes your sashing. So the balance of your squares, your 10-inch squares, becomes your sashings. Okay, so in total you need 31 of these sashings, and all I've simply done is to cut it in half. Now if you are going to be using fat quarters, as I said, your blocks will square up to 9.5. So once you've made your 4 patch, it will come up to 9.5. Okay, just bear that in mind. Okay, but we do need to cut the blocks down to 9, so hence the reason why I say that this project is fat quarter friendly, and of course you can use layer cake. All right, if you are going to use charm squares, you will obviously need to cut yardage in order to have your sashing. Your sashing turns out to be a 9-inch. All right, so 5 by 9.5. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Right, okay, so I'm going to put that to the side for now. So you need, as I said, 31 of your sashings, and if you are using directional print like I am, some of these sashings would be horizontal and vertical. So I have cut some horizontal and I have cut some vertical. It just keeps me be mindful that obviously, you know, I just need to bear in mind that if I'm going to use some of these, and obviously if you are using a collection of fabrics and some of them are horizontal, you will need to cut some of those for your so vertical sashings and horizontal sashings. All right, so just bear that in mind, so that whenever you cut it, it is the fabric prints themselves are laying the right side up. Okay, so I'm going to put this at the side at the moment. Now to make your sashings, we need to be adding some cornerstones, and these are what the 2.5-inch background fabric, which is the white, are for. So now you've seen me make cornerstones before, and it's the same that applied, but in this particular instance we are cornerstoning all 4 of the ends. So all 4 of the ends must have these pieces of fabric on, so your 2.5 on there. Okay, so I'm just going to take that to the side, and again the same applies when you do this. So in this instance here, what you need to do is draw a line from this point to that point there, and then you stitch on that line, and you do that for all 4 corners. What you do need to bear in mind is that and I like to look for markings that makes it a lot more easier to be mindful of. So you're looking at a little triangle there, so I've drawn my marking line there so that you can see that triangle there. All right, and I've identified it as well with a pin, just to ensure that I remind myself that this is the area in which I am cutting off. All right, so I'm going to get one which I've already sewn together and show you what it looks like. So this is what it actually looks like. Okay, so basically those are really your blocks. So I'll go through the quantities again. So for your sashings you need 31 of these. Okay, for your 4 patch squares you need 20 of these, so these are your blocks. You also need 124 of your 2.5 strips for your background fabric. You also need 12 of your 5.5, so 5 and square for your background fabric. So that's all of the actual cuts that you actually need. Now let me show you how to put the block together, and it's quite easy. So I'm going to start with, I'll bring back this block here. So you need your 4 patch to begin with. All right, and I have mixed some of my colors together. All right, so I'm going to put that one there also. Now what you do need to bear in mind that I haven't done this yet is to trim these off here. Okay, so the excess we need to actually trim off, but I haven't done mine just as yet, and to be honest I may just simply leave them on there. It is not that bulky, to be honest, so I may just leave that there. So that's where that block, that sashing goes. Okay, the next one I'm going to add another color. So again, remember this is where my horizontal sashing comes in, because I'm going to use some of them. So again, so making sure that it's laid right side up. Okay, and then I'm going to add my 5-inch square in there. Okay, and hopefully you can actually see what's developing here. Let me just close my blinds a little bit. Right, that is so much better now. Okay, so hopefully you can see what's actually forming. Now I have one that I've already stitched together, so let's take this aside and make some room so you can see what I am referring to a lot more easily. So I have that one there. So this is completely stitched together. All right, so the next one is going to go right next to it there. And again, just be mindful not to mix your colors. All right, so for example, if I have the peach there, I wouldn't want to add another peach block, 4-patch block right next to it. So I'm just going to move it around and shuffle it down there, and I'm going to bring another one in. Let's have a look. Let's try and choose a green one there. Well, you can use any sort of colors you want, but you know, it's really down to you and what you use and how you bring yours together. So that goes there as well. Okay, so hopefully you can see what is actually forming using the sashing. Okay, that one goes there, and again we're going to use another one of these ones here, and again I'm going to use one of the print. Again, this one has been cut upright, so that goes there. So hopefully you can again see what is actually forming here. So hence the reason why it is actually called star spotting, because the stars are formed via the sashings in between the blocks. So this is literally how the blocks is going to be laid out. So again, I'm going to add my 5-inch there, and I'm going to take another one. Let's have a look. So far I keep grabbing the same colors. Let's go digging and see, because I have made a few of them already. Okay, let's have a look and see. Right, I mean, a lot of them is repeated, so again I need a block. One of these blocks can go here now. That's upside down, so that goes there, and then another one goes there. But again, you can play around so then you get the idea of how it is actually formed. So again, another block, and I'm just going to remove these at the side, so I'm spreading out as I'm growing here. So that is the idea really of the block. So you can see the stars are actually forming, hence the reason why it's called star spotting. All right, so the more you add on, the more you create your blocks. So I'm just going to swap some things around and see. Now, if you wanted to cut from yardage, you can. That will be ideal also. I mean, it's not a difficult block to put together. It's quite easy actually. It's quite fun, to be honest. Just simply laying the blocks out and putting them together. So I'm just going to grab this one again. So I'm just being mindful. Yeah, so I'm just placing them at the moment. I'm not literally going to leave them as is, because at the end of the day I really need to keep all of the colors separated so that they're not touching each other. But you get the idea of how the blocks are actually formed, and hence the reason why it is called star spotting. So every time you add a sashing on with another block, essentially you are creating a star. All right, so go ahead, get all your blocks together, and in that way you can simply just start laying them out, playing around, and making up your quilt top. So I'm going to go now and put all of the blocks out together, and then I shall show you what it looks like. I don't think I'll demonstrate to you really how to sew a 4-patch. Okay, and I've also already in other videos shown you how to stitch together the cornerstones, so I wouldn't do that yet again because it's quite simple. I mean, if you're unsure of how to do it, if you can look at, I'll put a link below in the description box for the butterfly bouquet, which does this technique quite a lot, so that way you won't be confused as to how to add on the cornerstone onto the sashings. All right, so just to recap, your square, once you've cut them down or sewn them together, should measure out at 9.5. Same for your sashings. Okay, if you're using a 10-inch square, if you're using a fat quarters, the squares themselves will be 9.5. So therefore, once you've sewn it together, it will then return to a 9-inch square. Excuse me. Same applies for the sashings. All right. So you can then trim it down. Won't be a lot being lost. Very small trimmings. So it just makes it easier in the sense that if you have fat quarters, you can cut them down to make up all of your blocks. And you would need, for the sashings, just to recap, I've got my little notes here, you would need 31 sashings, 2.5 of the squares, so you'll need 124 of these, and 5-inch square, you'll need 12. Okay, and your blocks themselves, you're going to be needing 20 of these. All right, so that is literally it. I mean, the sizes come together quite easily, as well as the blocks. So I will sew them together like this, so it's easier as a big block like this. So then all I will do then is pick up the blocks as they are and then stitch them together. Okay, so the quilt forms with how did I think, 1, 2, 3, so 4 across and 5 down. So it's really a smallish quilt. Really, it's not a huge quilt. Okay, I haven't considered the idea of adding borders yet, because as we know, when you add borders, it increases the size of the quilt. All right, so for now we're just going to make the quilt top, and then I will decide as to whether or not I wanted to add any borders to it. And borders actually do extend the size, and it also frames what you're actually displaying, the creativity that you're creating within the quilt top. All right, so let's go sew these together, lay them all out, sew them together, and I'll show you what it comes together like. Okay guys, so I have now laid all of the blocks out together. Hopefully you can see the pattern coming through quite easily. Okay, and you can understand why the quilt is named Star Spotting. All right, so remember, this was the first block that I actually stitched together. This is another block here, and again they're not stitched together, as you can tell. All right, so what I am going to, well, the options are open to you. You can either stitch all the way down, and the 5 rows will be your, or column I should say, will be your starting point, or you can stitch across. So then I will stitch 1, 2, 3, 4 together. All right, because remember, the sashing gives you your legs plus your 5-inch square, your other legs on this side. So you can stitch across, or you can stitch down to form the whole quilt top. All right, the colors are very pastel, they're very subtle, they're not, it's not a bright quilt. I'm not sure if I will still add a border. As it is, I think it's nice. So yes, I will stitch it up together, and I will let you know, well, obviously I will share it with you what it actually turns out like. But yeah, it's looking good, it's coming together quite nicely. I do feel that it's going to stitch together also very quickly as well. So yeah, so let's go forward with that, and then we will see. Now what I wanted to ensure that you understand is the layout itself in terms of color placement. Now I have a lot of greens, like, well, I think the color path formations are quite equated. However, I do feel like in this area here, I think there's a lot of greens there, so I may move that around. I have been looking for areas where to put it, but I think I have literally covered where greens are, to be honest. So I think if I move anything else, if I move this one and swap it with this one here, let's have a look and see what that comes out like there, and put this one here, and then you see now what I have done now is still created more greens on this side, but I think that looks okay actually. It's been, yes, I'm happy with that. It's separated it, because I think it was bunched up in the corner there a little bit too much, so that looks much better. I still may move this one here actually, where I see those 2 greens together, so I'll swap that around with another one, and I think I'll be happy with that. But overall, loving it. Looks lovely. Just love how the stars are popping. Literally, there's no way of missing the stars. They're really nice. And I've used white, as you know, for the background fabric, so that looks really good. Right, so moving on now, let's stitch it all together and then see what the actual quilt top looks like, and then we will discuss adding some borders, or I may just go ahead with the borders and then tell you options that I chose, etc., to add the borders onto it. But overall, it looks pretty good. My main objective is to see those stars popping out, because at the end of the day, the quilt top is called star spotting. So being able to spot the stars is important. So again, you'll have to use very high contrasting fabric in this case to make sure those stars are very much visible. Or if you want it to be subtle and really have, you know, an objective whereby you need to search to find it, it's entirely down to you. But I think the fact that it's popping is better. Okay, all right then, see you in the next one. Okay, so I've gone ahead and stitched 2 rows together. Now, before I move on any further, I wanted to highlight the way in which this quilt top is actually stitched together. Now you can see the stars are really popping. I've done 2 rows so far, and it's 4 across. All right, just so that you bear that in mind. Now, to stitch the blocks together, I've done it in this way. So your 4 patches, okay, is stitched on via the sashings here. So you remember your blocks, so your 4 patches are separated by these sashings here. So you have a sashing at the bottom, and you have one at the side. Next to the one there, you have your square in the middle, which helps to form your star. So if you look at the one that's already completed there, you can see your sashing there, your sashing there, and here, formed together by this 5-inch square star there. All right, square to make your star. Now the way that I have stitched the block together is your 4 patch, again attaching your lower sashings, okay, and then let me come back to this one here. So we go up there, that's attached there, you stitch that together with a 1/4-inch seam, and then we attach that there, again stitch it together with a 1/4-inch seam. Now once you've done that, you're going to have 2 separate pieces here for your block. So obviously then you will then fold this over. Obviously they'll be in one piece by then, and sew it together. Now what you need to be mindful of here is to make sure that you pin these 2 here so that you get a really nice point there. All right, now the reason I'm saying this, because we know fabric tends to move sometimes, okay, and for whatever reason, it could be the fact that the conditions of the room might be a little bit warm, the fibers are just a little bit more softer, and therefore they glide through the machine a lot more quickly or slowly. Really don't know, but what I do know is that I've cut all of my cuts accurately. Okay, so to avoid happening, and this is why we pin stuff, is because the fabric tends to move. So to avoid the fabric moving, I would advise you to cut it, and sorry, my apologies, to cut it, to pin it. And the reason why I say that is because my first block, I did not, I'm not going to go in closer so you can see my mistake, I did not pin it there, and you can see that it's slightly off. Now I'm not going to I'm not going to unpick it, because I think from a distance you cannot really spot that. Okay, had it been something that was easily spotted, I would have taken it out, because I take pride in my work. Nevertheless, I just wanted to share that with you so that you know what the pitfalls are. So pin the blocks at the junction, so therefore once you start stitching, it does not move, and it literally stays. So since I have been pinning, they all have been coming out really nicely, so no issues at all. Okay, so just make sure you pin them all. Now the other thing I also needed to mention, which I made a mistake, and I thought let me remind you, because I don't know, you may probably do it, but just to let you know. Now after I made all of my blocks, I did something quite foolish. I forgot was to trim down my sashings. Now, I only did not do that for probably about 8 to 10. So I made all of my sashings, which are these here. Okay, and you need to trim your sashings in its raw state, i.e. without the cornerstones being added. Okay, so you need to trim your sashings down to the same length as your block. I did not do that for 8 or 10 of them. I forgot. And so therefore, I just went ahead and added my cornerstones. And of course, I noticed something was slightly odd when I decided to start sewing them together. And I was like, oh, this looks rather large. Why is it so big? And upon closer investigation, I noticed, oh, you silly girl, you did not trim the balance of your blocks. So to avoid doing that, make sure you do. So obviously, you know, I hate unpicking, and I had to go and unpick all those cornerstones and redo them. Trim the blocks and then stitch them all again. So something that should have taken literally 20-30 minutes to stitch the quilt together end up taking me a lot more longer because I had to unpick it. So just be careful of that. So again, just reminding you of the slight little pitfalls that you can have with this quilt. And again, I think that was just more on my part rather than the objective of not cutting anything properly. So it was just me lack of concentration. But other than that, it's coming together really nicely. You can definitely see the stars popping out, hence the name of the quilt, Star Spotting. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the quilt top, and then I will come back and show you what the quilt top looks like. Okay guys, so I have set up myself so that you can actually see what I'm doing, and I can talk to you as well. So hopefully you can see from the above shot there, and I can look at you and speak to you as well when I need to. Now I'm just about to start quilting the quilt, and I will tell you what I usually do first before I start quilting. So I do a number of two things. One, I will take the batting out and lay it flat so that all the creases comes out of the batting, so therefore it's nice and flat without any wrinkles or creases in between it. If I don't do that, I will baste it, and then I will put the whole item on the actual bed and just let it sit for a day or two, depending on how much time I actually have, or depending on how creased the batting is. And again, that's just to allow it to just really lay nice and flat so that it's easier to quilt with. And I think it helps with the process also. So those are one of the two things I actually do, either before I baste or after I baste. The next thing I usually do is I will then make a sample piece for my pattern for my quilting. So I have this piece here, and you may see me look up at some times just to make sure that I'm actually catching the view of what I'm showing you on my hands in the camera, and I can see I'm slightly off, so I think I'm okay now. So I had two squares that I stitched together, and I've made a little mug rug so that I can just do some quilting sample on. I've done a little motif, and I've also done a little feather with squares around it. Now it looks okay, it looks fine, and I think I will go ahead and do just little simple items or simple quilting patterns in between the quilt itself for all of the blocks. I have decided to use white bottom because my print on the back is an animal print. I'm actually making this quilt for my granddaughter, and she is so beautiful. I can't tell you guys, she's just so pretty. I just can't believe how beautiful she is. And I've also used white on the back, and for this particular sample here, what I did was I did a peach color because obviously the quilt itself is peach, and I used white also, so I just alternate the thread to see what it actually looked like. I think I will go ahead with the white because it has a little bit, they both have a little bit of glossy sheen to them, but I like the white instead. The peach color just kind of swallows into the peach square. Now I'm sure it will show up on the green or the sort of grayish, greenish, darkish shade that there is there, but I think either one will work. But I think I will stick with the white glossy thread. So that's what I'm going to do. Now the next thing I usually do after making my sample, what I usually do is then baste around the whole quilt. So I put my walking foot on and I will baste around the whole quilt just to make sure it's nice and secure. Sometimes, depending on the size of the quilt, I may go in between the blocks and do a straight line just to make sure I hold it securely on there. If I don't do that while I'm quilting with my free motion, I will do stitch in the ditch just to ensure that, again, all those 3 layers are tightly secured on there. But for this particular one, I'm going to start with just going around the perimeter of the quilt, so all 4 squares, and hold the edges down just to make sure it doesn't move. Now this quilt have been sitting here on the table for few hours or so, and I think it's nice and flat now. All right, so I'm just going to get started on that. So I'm going to be wearing my extra pair of eyes because with these things obviously I need it. All right, so that's what that looks like, and again I'll look up just to ensure that you can see what I'm doing there. Okay, so I'll put that aside now. So I've got a lovely little mug rug, and again, these are the things I think you can do so that way you get into the habit of knowing and having a plan for your quilting. You know, just have a quilting plan, simple as that. All right, so I'll put that to the side. I already have my machine set up, my walking feet is on, and my thread is all ready to go. I have 2 extra sets of bobbins ready as well. I have a full bobbin already inside there. I'm not going to do heavy quilting. As I said, there's many motifs, and I've only planned 2 sort of planned for my quilting. So however I feel while I'm quilting, I'm going to add some little bits and bobs. I'm quite happy to mix up the quilting as well, which I think is a good thing to do. But for now, I'm just going to start with actually putting that basting stitch around. Okay. So you're going to see me flopping the quilt every so often, and that is literally to get it nice and flat. Now I have just straight pinned the edges, which I usually do again, and I usually start quilting from the right hand side and I work my way across. Okay, irregardless of how big the quilt is. You can start anywhere you see fit, but I also like starting on the right. Very seldom I start in the middle because I feel there's just too much bunching going on both sides, so you have so many quilts of the rolls underneath the throat space, and then you have on the left hand side as well. But I like starting and working my way inward, so to speak, and then I turn the quilt around. So I'm just rolling the quilt down, and I've got my straight pins on the edge, and I'm going to remove them as I sew. Again, I'm going to do a nice big stitch for this. So right now it is saying to me it's 2.5, and that's too small, so I'm just going to lengthen it. Remember this is a basting stitch, again just to hold the edges down so it doesn't move. So I've gone up to 5.0. all right, and I've put it down. I'm just adjusting so that I have my pivot foot on, or pivot motion on, so that when I stop sewing, the presser foot, the machine foot in this case, move upwards. And I'm just going to sew. So I'll go around this once, and then I will come back and we'll start the quilting then. Now this process moves very quickly because obviously the stitch length is quite long, so it's 5.0, so it doesn't take long. Again, it's just basting it. So as I stitch, I'm literally going to remove my pins. So all I'm doing literally is putting a straight stitch there just to hold it securely. Okay. So I'm just going to go do that now, go all the way around, and then I will come back and show you where and how I actually start quilting. So as I said, as I get closer, I just remove my straight pins. I do sometimes use the quilting pins, but to be honest, I do like the straight pins. It's easier for me to move when I'm quilting around them as well. So I'll come back and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so what I've done now is to complete it all of that basting stitch all the way around. I have now put on my darning foot of using a closed toe one, and I have not. I'm going to now select free motion on my machine. There we go, found it now, on, excellent. Okay, so now you don't usually reverse stitch, okay, at the start of piecing or quilting, all right, there's no need for it. So I'm just going to get myself all organized and get my position all nice and right, and again I'm going to start from the right, and again if you see me look up, I'm just checking that you can actually see what I'm doing. So all of my basting has done around the edges, and again that is to avoid it as well from moving. You know, sometimes when you quilt, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but sometimes, and this is the reason why you need those extra layers on the edge. So whether you have it 3" or 2.5 or 4", however much you have around the perimeters of the quilt, that's the reason, because sometimes the quilt shifts. So one way of avoiding that is to put a basting stitch that it actually stays in place. Okay, so I'm going to start quilting now, and I'm going to mix it up, to be honest. I'm going to do a little bit of swirls. I'm going to put some motifs in there, and I also may do some dot to dot. I don't want to make it very dense, so what I may possibly do also is just some flowers, like sort of a feather shape, and start with that. So I'll start there and then fill it as I go. Okay. So I'm just making like a little hook, come all the way around, I'm going right in there. And I'm just going to curve out and come back out. Literally doing swirls and filling up the lines. Now my speed is sort of medium, it's not very fast. And I'm using really big swirls to really fill that area. Any space that I'd like to get around, I'm just echoing. Okay, what I'm going to go into now is just doing some swirls in this one here. Again, and just move over around, go to that hook, go all the way back, come back out. Now I like to tuck myself in when I go to my little, when I go around that hook, I go all the way around. And anywhere you can echo yourself, simply do that. Okay, so hopefully you can see that and I'm not looking up for no reason. All right, so I've done 2 blocks there now. So what I'm going to do now is continue in this particular block up here using that same sort of flower pattern I did initially. So I'm going to come back in the corner there, and again I'm going to go around, make a nice big hook, look like a question mark somehow going. And again, I can fill that space with just petals all the way around. Remember, I'm not trying to get a dense quilt here. This is for my granddaughter, as I said, and I wouldn't want anything too, heavy on her, really, to be honest. I want it really nice and flowy, okay? Again, so I'm going to now do my swirls, and I'm going to come out, make a nice big swirl. Now you can go either way you want when it comes to the swirls. You do not have to go the same way. So you can have them going, for example, one go that way, you come back, the other go that way. Yeah, and then you can come in the middle here and do it together. So it's really up to you, however you do it. Sometimes I change my mind mid-stem, if that makes sense. Okay guys, so the quilt is completed. It measures 46 by 59 and a half. So it's beautiful size for my granddaughter. She's only, well, she will be 2 soon. I say soon, I mean next year. She's 1.5 basically. And this is my third quilt for her. She had a little play rug that I made, and then I made a baby quilt, and now this is her third big girl quilt, so to speak. I know she's getting older. So I'll take you a little bit closer some of the quilting patterns that I actually did. It's nice and light, so it flows really beautifully, which is what I like. I did a lot of shapes in reference to that I leave the loft in between, so like the hearts and stuff. So because I know, you know, kids, they like touching things with lots of textures. I did some writing as well on there, so you can see the word love, but some little stars around it. Lots of quilting patterns, swirls, did some dot to dot, so it's a mixture of everything. Did some motifs as well, did some swirls again, straight lines. There's another writing there. So really, her name is Lana, and I've put her name on there as well. So yeah, I mean, it came out really beautifully. I do like it. The colors are absolutely gorgeous. So it's a lot of animal farm print. So something to, you know, capture her eyes, and so she can rub her hands along the textures of the quilt. It's beautiful, actually. I do love it. So I think it would be suitable for her. Her parents doesn't know I'm actually making it, so they will obviously know very quickly, because I'm gonna soon pass it over into the new owner's hands. So yeah, looks really nice. On the back, again, the more animal print, you know, just to give her eyes something to focus on, so it's colorful. As children, babies like, you know, things that captures their attention. But this is, so the title of the quilt is called Star Spotting, and hopefully you can spot all the stars there as I stand back. I'm actually in my quilting room, didn't put it on the bed, it's way too small to go on the bed, it's pointless. Fits on my table in my quilting room quite fine. I've literally just completed this, so yeah, so it looks really nice, really happy. The colors are beautiful, you can see all the stars popping out. Again, the quilt name is called Star Spotting, so it, you know, goes in reference to it. This pattern will be suitable for a, you know, normal adult quilt, obviously. It's beautiful actual quilt pattern, which I really love. It's very easy to put together because you're literally making a 4-patch followed by cornerstones on the same length as your 4-patch, so very easy to put together. It came together very quickly, this quilt. Obviously quilting it took a little bit of a time because I did lots of different quilting in between each squares, but a one all over pattern would very much be suitable for something like this. But I just wanted to play around with it because I know she would like the textures of all the different felt of the loft actually in between the squares, something she can play with while she falls asleep. So yeah, it has come together really nicely. Even the writing came out really nice as well. Really loving the love one also, looks really nice. So guys, that comes to the end of our video tutorial this week. So do like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and of course guys, happy quilting, and I shall see you next week for another tutorial. So take care, and once again, happy quilting guys, and bye for now.